What's up, gamers? We're back in the basement. This is Papa Jumpluff. Today we've got a banger of a deck profile. We're going to be going over what is colloquially known as Zero. That is a Haymaker style deck with an Aerodactyl backline. I've heard it described by Volk, friend of the channel, actually teammate of the channel, as a runaway train. It does take some stamina to learn the lines. However, it is an extremely rewarding deck to play if you can get good. So without further ado, let's start it off. We've got 3 copies of Rocket Zapdos. Completely just like an insane Pokemon card. We've got Plasma for 1 energy. It fuels up the Electro Burn by attacking for 20, but then it grabs an lightning energy from your discard pile and attaches it to itself. So it's like a build your own attacker, build your own runaway train. So here comes Rocket Zapdos. I'm going to set those aside over there. Next up, we've got our second Haymaker, which is Electabuzz. Now, Electabuzz is another one with 70 HP. And it's just got 2 really, really good attacks. It's probably better to start off with an Electabuzz in the front line whenever you can, because you've got 1 energy attached for Thunder Shock, 2 energy attaches for Thunder Punch, which can do 30 or 40 based on the result of the coin. I'll let you go ahead and do that math, figure out how many times you'll be able to get positive results with this. But I think the idea here is if an Electabuzz gets knocked out, then you've got 2 energy cards in the discard pile to follow up with Rocket Zapdos. You attach 1, and then you Plasma, you get 1 of the energy from Electabuzz back onto Zapdos. So very cool 1-2 punch style Haymaker attackers. Then we've got to fill out our back line. So we're running 2 copies of Buried Fossil from Skyridge here. And the idea here, because it's better than Mysterious Fossil. However, we're stuck with a retreat cost now. Not so great, and we're at 30 HP, and it will reward your opponent with a prize card, unlike Mysterious Fossil. However, we've got to conserve our trainer spaces here in WotC-20, so Buried Fossil it is. We've got the Pokemon Power Reconstruction, which lets you trade a basic energy card from your hand to find an Ammonite or a Kabuto card. Now, it does say Ammonite or Kabuto. You cannot find an Aerodactyl with this card. So, how do we cheat out an Aerodactyl? Well, you'll take the Buried Fossil, and you'll find yourself an Ammonite. Ammonite has Pokemon Power Revive Fossil, which has exactly the same text as the trainer card Fossil Egg. So once a turn, you get to flip a coin, and if heads, you get to search your deck for a card that evolves from Mysterious Fossil. Now, back in the day, in the Fossil set, they blessed us with an Aerodactyl that does not evolve from Old Amber. No, it evolves from Mysterious Fossil. So you get to go ahead and, once a turn, attempt to rip an Aerodactyl out of your deck and throw it on the bench and treat it as if it were a basic Pokemon. So the best way that I've found to go about doing this is try and land 2 Aerodactyls on your bench. Why 2 Aerodactyls on the bench? Well, if you're playing an Aerodactyl deck and your friends or your local meta know about it, they're probably going to be packing some Igglybuffs on their back line to shut down your Aerodactyl and kind of, take away the big advantage that you get by running basic Haymakers with Aerodactyl, which would normally force them to play with their basic Pokemon, which are definitely not going to hold up to something like Rocket Zapdos. So, 2 Aerodactyls on the bench, then you could stop searching for Aerodactyls, keep your other bench slot open for something that can attack. And with that said, that's the fossil package out of the way. We've got 1 copy of Tyrogue. This is just a super cool baby Pokemon. For 1 energy, you can Smash Punch, which is flip a coin. If tails, the attack does nothing, but if it's heads, you are doing 30 damage for 1 energy, which is insane. Now, this is great in matchups like a Do the Wave So you can knock out a Jigglypuff with one attack from Tyrogue. It's weak to fighting. It also is pretty good against a Chansey because, one energy, you deal 30 to the, well, you'll deal 60 to the Chansey because of weakness. Now, if Chansey is able to crack back with a double edge, it's super not worth it because if they flip heads, their double edge is dealing 80 damage to Chansey just to take out a Tyrogue, which is like, why would you do that? Why would you do that to yourself? So Tyrogue is here to fulfill that space. Fantastic Pokemon all around. Then we go ahead and run 2 copies of Elekid. Elekid for the bench, we've got a Playful Punch. Some people are playing a decks that will use a lot of special conditions. They'll frequently be putting our active Pokemon to sleep, or they'll be trying to stall out with maybe things like Scrunch from the Chansey, which doesn't allow attacks to deal damage to Chansey, but Playful Punch is not an attack. It's a Pokemon power, so you'll still be able to deal damage with that. The other thing that your opponents may do is Gust of Wind and Aerodactyl into your active slot, which can, if you don't have a Warp Energy in your hand to put it back onto the bench as soon as possible, you can at least still try and get some damage in with the Elekid's Playful Punch. And then, last but not least, we've been doing it every deck profile this week, but we've got the 4 Clefas for the WotC-20 side of things. Though I have found that this deck needs Cleffa the least, but you want 4 Cleffa, just trust me. Next up, we've got the supporters. We've got 2 copies of Copycat, and we've got 2 copies of Pokemon Fan Club, and I've got 1 copy of Town Volunteers. This is like the signature 5 that I tend to run in so many of my decks. We've got, just this exact lineup. Fan clubs are helping us get our, buried fossil or put down an attacker into the bench so that we can, get our wheels turning as soon as possible. Town volunteers for the late game. If you're running low on Rocket Zapdos, it's probably time to put some lightning energy back into the deck so you can fuel up some late game Electabuzz plays, or even, some late game Zapdos plays. It's all good. Copycat is great hand refill while your opponent is dirtling around with a Cleffa in the active slot. If you're trying to smack that Cleffa, but you've been missing here and there, hey, at least you can refresh your 7. So that's pretty good. Those aside, we're going to follow up with Fossil Egg. Fossil Egg is, just like I was saying, it's the same as the Ammonite that we were running. So you flip a coin of heads, search your deck for a card that evolves from Mysterious Fossil. Place it onto your bench, and treat it as though it were a basic Pokemon. Now, it may be tempting to go straight for the Aerodactyl, but what you want to do with Fossil Egg is grab the Ammonite, and then you get to do this every single turn with Ammonite. That's how you get your Aerodactyls out as soon as possible. All right, those aside, I've got 1 copy of Underground Lake. This is really cool because it allows either player, but mainly you, to play Ammonite or Kabuto cards from your discard pile directly onto your bench. So this is, really cool. If they knock out your Ammonite before you get any Aerodactyls, you just replay it. And there's also a cool combo where you can use a computer search to discard an Ammonite from your hand in the early game, search this up with your computer search, and then go ahead and play that Ammonite. So, yeah, it's a great way to get to Aerodactyl as fast as possible. Then we've got a second stadium. This is Eco Gym, and it helps us to keep our non-colorless energy going back to our hand. So this doesn't help with warp energy, but it does help with the metal energies that we're running in the deck. This Rocket Zapdos is amazing with metal energy. And it, gets our lightning energy back to our hand as well if our opponent is really, really heavy on energy removal. So this helps keep us in the game. Plus, after you've used Underground Lake, you don't really need to sit on it for very, very long. So switching to Eco Gym is pretty good. Then we got 1 copy of Item Finder, just all around good card to get something back that you need. Got 3 copies of Gust of Wind. Since you're hitting so hard with the Electabuzz and with the Rocket Zapdos, you might as well try and take stuff out as fast as possible. Your opponent is probably going to be trying to stall with baby Pokemon, so you want to make sure that you're hitting something that's going to take damage over and over. And we've got 3 copies of Computer Search, as we want to find that underground lake. Yeah, we want to find this as often as possible, but it doesn't warrant, changing this up to a 2-2 line. This is what's going to allow you to discard that Ammonite as fast as possible. Next up, I've got 2 copies of Professor Oak, just great hand refresh, and then I've got 2 copies of Goldberry. This is also a very good card to combine with Rocket Zapdos. If you do have to go with an Electro Burn with 4 electric energy attached, you can at least regain that HP that you just lost with recoil. Then, for the energy cards, let me just count them up real quick. All right, here we go. Yep, we've got 12 lightning energy. We are very heavy on lightning energy, and we need to fuel the Electro Burn for Zapdos, which does take 3 electric energy. It's not so demanding with the Electabuzz. Electabuzz only needs 1 electric for Thundershock and 1 electric and 1 of anything else for the Thunder Punch. So, but yeah, 12, because you can pretty much freely pitch these as well to a Computer Search and get them right back with Rocket Zapdos. Then we go on and have 3 Metal Energy. Reason being is 3 Zapdos, 3 Metal Energy. You don't need to go into a 4th, because Zapdos only needs to grab 1 of these in order to get the perfect numbers off of Electro Burn, which is, because you would have these 4 energy on the Zapdos. So Zapdos would be dealing not 70 with Electro Burn, because the metal would reduce it by 10. So it would deal 60 out, and then it would only take 10 in, because the recoil damage is based on the number of lightning energy. So lightning energy, it would normally take 30, but because it is dealing the damage, now it's only taken 20, and because it's receiving the damage and the metal energy is here, now it's actually only taking 10 in recoil. So you've got 60 out and 10 in, as long as you've got that energy combo on a Rocket Zapdos. Incredibly powerful. Then we got 1 copy of Cyclone Energy. Just another way to get a baby out of your opponent's active slot. Also pretty good to start with a Cleffa and attach Cyclone Energy to knock your opponent's Cleffa out of the active slot if they don't have another baby on the bench. So just a super useful energy. And then I've got 4 copies of Warp Energy, because, as I mentioned before, the pain point of the deck is going to be your opponent using Gust of Wind to pull the Aerodactyl forward, so that, you're unable to attack for a turn or 2 under, their assumption. So you can just use Warp Energy to pull Aerodactyl back out as soon as possible. All right, so that's going to do it for the 0 deck profile. I'm just going to throw these down real quick, just get a cool looking backdrop while we outro here. That's the 0 deck profile. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and remember to show up frequently for your favorite WotC-20 updates. This has been Papa Jumpluff, and we will catch you next time.